Hear ye, doom is upon us all. The next battlefield is doomed. Okay, hear me out. Battlefield as a franchise has often been broken. If you're a new or casual player, this might come to you as a shock, a surprise. You've played some Battlefield, 1 or 5 as of late, maybe some 2042, and it's mostly been fine, really. Nothing really that horrible, just Battlefield. But if I think I know who you are, an old video essay enjoying prehistoric relic, just like your boy, this probably doesn't actually surprise you that much. I remember when people used to ban shotguns. Alright, Grandpa, let's get you to bed. You see, almost every single Battlefield after Battlefield 3 has been a horrible train wreck. Every single one. Day 1 patches.
Oh my god.
Broken netcode.
So even though the server knows that there is a major time difference between these two players, it still applies the damage to the 17 milliseconds player.
Fuse is lit!
Crashes.
That's what I thought. What am I looking at?
Battlefield 4, you done f***ed it up! You done f***ed up Battlefield 4!
Horrendous bugs.
It went a little to the right though.
I can't tell.
Reloading.
You guys are gonna land. It's oh my god!
More bugs. Even more bugs. Horrible cosmetics.
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me.
In-game cash shops. Balancing issues. Broken weapons. Every single launch Battlefield spent significant time on just ironing out horrible launches. And while it got awful at times, people were rather content actually. Our expectation was that after these issues were fixed, the bugs quashed and the balancing fixed, we'd have the core Battlefield formula. We knew we would be at the end ultimately satisfied. And so, with a few controversies here and there, people still bought the game. I'd say this same cycle has been iterated on many other channels in a form or another, but I'd like to name this phenomena in general as the DICE cycle. First step is for DICE or EA to tease out that a Battlefield game is going to launch, get the hype going, promise that the new game is going to be better than ever before, with a larger development team. In actuality, the game is still in early development phases and probably has seen several revisions at this point due to conflicting views on what new and trendy to implement in the game.
Royale!
Second step, the trailers come out and hype builds even more. Fancy CGI and explosions galore. People are trying to break through the DICE Sweden's front doors to get access to the early version of the game at this point. Pre-orders are through the roof. However, behind the scenes the game isn't ready. Due to the strict schedule set by the publisher, the investors breathing down on their necks, employees are working overtime to try and get the game to a playable state. Third step, the launch. The game wasn't ready, and it shows.
I said green!
People are disappointed.
Damn it!
A rep will go to the forums, perhaps issue an apology of some kind. It doesn't go well. Resources are focused on patching up the game, and it's expected that the staff involved will hunker down in their bunkers and wait for the storm to pass. Fourth step. Implement new maps, new vehicles and weapons. Have people who know what they are actually doing implement balancing and design changes to please the gamers. Then repeat the cycle as needed. As we can see from this scale, we could loop it essentially forever if it didn't run on a resource. This resource I propose is trust. After all, failure to meet up expectations repeatedly will undoubtedly lead to deterioration here. However, it's not the only resource. And that's where we come to the element that might destroy Battlefield as we know it. And all it has to do is with Battlefield 2042.
EA has delivered undercooked salmon.
It all changed with the release of Battlefield 2042. This time the flaws were too bad for even the most optimistic of loyal fans to bear. The game was so utterly broken on launch, in terms of design in all aspects, that even to this day the game hasn't properly recovered from its terrible launch. The map design was horrible.
We've got to go 120 miles to the north. That's 200 kilometers to
Objective Apples.
a place famous for its camel races. Camping equipment, tools, spare wheels and spare parts, diesel fuel, medical supplies, rations for 3 weeks, and of course, plenty of water.
The specialist system, horrible. The vehicle balance, horrible. Don't get me even started on how garbage this piece of is. And the premium store cosmetics? Utter ass. People stopped playing the game. The careful ones didn't even buy it. And as the price of the game cheapened, a Game Pass was implemented. And as again, once the rage died down, people got in and started playing. On the surface it would have seemed the cycle would be repeated. So what's different with 2042 exactly? Well, let me introduce you to the new element on the wheel. The pressure to innovate. Battlefield has at its core always been under pressure to innovate. And it's the thing that has separated it from the likes of Call of Duty as a franchise. Features like Levolution, Dynamic Destruction, Behemoths, all well done new implementations to the franchise, adding onto the core chaos of what constitutes Battlefield. However, what differentiates these changes is that they were additive. They were built on a foundation that already existed, like the class system, like the environmental destruction mechanics. What was different this time was that the innovation in the game, the new systems, came at the expense of the former systems. The class system was to be dismantled in favor of operators, and the environmental destruction system was terribly undercooked. It came at the price of making every map larger. In essence, although it's hard to put into words, DICE overcooked and undercooked the game at the same time. They have plenty of revolutionary ideas, not enough time, and tons of expectations, both from the financial side and the audience side. And the sad thing is, they kind of set themselves up for this. It's been a thing for a long time now that every Battlefield in development has been hyped even before the concept is out. This is to please investors, of course, and to ensure the audience that development is going fine, but at this point, at the levels it's at, it's becoming detrimental. The writing on the wall with 2042 was kind of there all this time, and nobody just pretended to notice. Although my concept wheel isn't really definitive, it's not set in stone, I wanted to make it to illustrate to you how the ramping up of hype might make this wheel go faster and faster and things getting worse and worse. The more expectation and hype there is, the more of a letdown the game is gonna be if it fails. And in this case, Battlefield 2042 was so bad that the fan-base trust is at all-time lows. And people are already viewing the development of the next game with suspicion. And especially considering the recent news around the next upcoming Battlefield, I totally get why they are worried. What I've tried to underline with this video is that Battlefield 2042 is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to horrible Battlefield launches. and that is why the next one is probably going to be one too. However, as we discussed, the more DICE relies on post-patch ups, the worse every launch is going to be, the more trust is lost. And paired with pressure to revamp already functional systems, on top of adding new ones, it's like trying to play tennis with a polar bear.
Still got the old magic.
And no, although it might sound like it, that's not an actual Scandinavian sport. It's the national sport of Norway exclusively. What is at the core a critical element, the most essential thing, is that the change in battlefield systems must be geared towards augmenting said experience from a gameplay perspective. Augmenting the game from a financial perspective, on the other hand, needs to be done in a way that doesn't reduce elements from the former. The same principle should apply to the marketing too. The marketing should take into account that the game needs to be ready when it's launched. It should work more hand in hand with development, instead of fostering unrealistic expectations. Thus, I think the next Battlefield is going to have to succeed at launch, because DICE can't afford to have another Battlefield 2042 at their hands. Thus, it is imperative that they are given enough time to cook. Vi måste laga mat. I think it's critical for them to be able to once more regain some trust by their fanbase. By us. Despite the grim outlook you might have gotten from this video, I truly want to see DICE succeed in their next title launch. The only thing that worries me is that they have a larger team than ever, and as one person who's taken part in many group projects, a larger group doesn't necessarily mean you get work done faster. In many cases, that is the opposite effect. And knowing EA and how they have handled publishment dates before, I don't hold much optimism in terms of scheduling by them at least. I've gotten quite depressed during the making of this video, and it has nothing to do with the previous endnote. It has everything to do with the fact that I had to bring up this fuck thing. As a transport player, its existence makes me feel dread, a lack of hope. How am I supposed to make it work? Why does a vehicle the size of the entire state of Texas revolve around a stationary hover mode in a game where you have tanks with railguns, tracking TV missiles, and anti-tank weapons capable of locking onto air targets? I'll perhaps never get the full answer I'm looking for. And as to you, dear viewer, you may go now. Go before you become a transport player too. Go before it's too late.